So I wanted to give you just one little additional video here, not required for notes, but just being because I realized in looking at this, because I'm looking now to the next one, is that one thing that can be a little confusing when you first start using VS Code, and specifically, because I'm guessing many of you will, is that when you start using it, is that knowing how to preview a file can sometimes be a little, and I'm actually just holding this because I realized I needed to, can be a little confusing, quite honestly. It should be straightforward, and it's actually one of the reasons when I first started using VS Code at the beginning of the summer, I was almost not going to use it because I'm like, okay, this should be easy. But then I was like, no, I stuck with it. I said to myself, this many people have got to be using this for a reason. So what I did as I was looking through the work that you're going to do, and I know that, and I kind of said this towards the end because I'd spent time on other things, but some of this is just going to be him talking about things, and I'm just going to allow you guys, I recommend watching all that, but what I'm going to grade you on is the coding along. Okay, so where you are following along with him doing it. And when I looked at this first item, I realized, oh, that's right. He's going to do things like in this first thing, their first item where he actually is showing it side by side. And I realized then I hadn't done that. So I'm going to show you. Okay, because that's what he does. And so what I'm going to do here is I'm going to show you in VS Code there's a thing called the command palette. And by the way, I did search for this topic, and I recommend you do the same on the Google. And if you search for Visual Studio Code previewing the HTML, you will get Stack Overflow. And then as I was looking at it, I'm like, you know what? It is always good to get introduced if you haven't already been to Stack Overflow. And then I'm like, wow, and there's actually some extensions. So that's also a good thing if you want to. So I'm just going to click into this option and show you because this is, like I said, I think a fairly common thing that new people run into when they're going in here and doing this. So what it does is it shows you the Command Shift P for the command palette. So I'll do that. So I'll get in there, Command Shift P, and then what you want to do is configure task runner. So it's basically saying when I do this, run this task. Now the first time I ran this, I actually ended up getting another list of options, and it was asking me, do you want to, it was kind of trying to help me along, saying, do you want to do it for this and this and this? If you get that when you click here, just select one of them, it doesn't matter. Because what will happen is it will create this file called task.json, and it will put it in your directory. This is something that we'll see later when we do GitHub, why this is something we end up not tracking, but that's previewing where we're heading. But then this document right here, and actually this is not a document, this is a JSON file format. We don't call these documents because JSONs are, you'll learn about JSON. The more you're around, you'll understand what is required to make them. You'll be writing them. Trust me, you will see them in the future. So then what you can do is you can go back to that example, and for me I am using my Mac, so I had to do this. I ended up writing it just because I like to do that sometimes, just to get my hands in the code for the day, but you could also do it the other way. So now once you have that file, let me just say this clearly, once you have that file, then you can close this out. And if you wanted to look at this file, then there was for me it was Shift Command B. And what that did is it ended up starting, and let me just go into right here, into my browser, and it started that file. Okay, so that you could have just browsed to the folder and done that way as well, but I just like to add into my tool set skill set of what I know how to do. So now if you want to set it up the way he has it, and here what you could do is just make this a little smaller, grab this, pull it out. And what I'm doing is grabbing that and pulling it out of the list of tabs that I have open, and then I could have them side by side. Okay, So then as he does things, right, like as he does P's and as he does other things, and he will say in there that you can go get things from a starting file, and you can download those exercise files. Yourlinda.com gives you that. But I also think it's just great because most of the time you can just type it in what you have. So whichever way, ultimately what I'm looking for is did you code along? And in this case, I created a week 3 in the code up, and then we'll do a week 4 and so forth because we'll do this for a couple of weeks. And it was weird because when I first started doing this, I was like, wait a minute, where's all the standard HTML? And he shows you that later. So he'll talk, I think, and we've already heard about Emmett, the idea of how to code faster. And if I come over here, then believe it or not, that is different, right? And again, what I'm doing here, H1, if I come over here, yep. Okay, so this is, and I'm just going back and forth. Now I will leave you with this, and it's kind of another fun thing to look at, is that the other thing you can do is, and this is a good introduction to another thing within any editor these days, is you can get an additional built-in or extension, we call them, into the browser. And there was something called Live HTML Previewer. And you can also check this out. Now what this does, which is kind of nice, is that it actually, as you update the code, as you write the code, it actually updates it automatically. So you don't have to do that F5. I had a little bit of a problem getting it to render right, so I'm going to play with that and see what it was that I missed because I did install it just to look at it. But if you continue on with my classes, one thing, especially if you take 93 with me, and those students that are taking 93 already, we use another program called Browser Sync that I have them install and then command line in Node so that they can then actually run a full server. So that's another great way. But then I noticed there's also an extension for that in here as well. So there's always a lot of different ways to do things. Okay, so I just wanted to give you this little additional help in case you were wondering how can I format my screen, or how can I do that same thing that James Williamson is doing in these first couple of items. So and I don't know if I went over this completely, but in your lecture doc, then you can just give me a link to your code up directory for this week as a way to show you did the lecture. All right, hope this helps. Thanks.